Introduction to Meditation, Session 6. Today's topic is the 3 realms of awareness. This session is being held on February 16th, 2017 at Dalhousie University, room B400. So far we've covered 5 different topics. We've looked at some of the ancient understanding of reality and meditation. We looked at Western analysis more on the scientific side as to how the brain and the body could be connected. Then we looked at relaxation and realized that it was an integration of 2 different nervous systems and how meditation could balance them. We went into the left and right brain and looked at the issue of cerebral lateralization and how meditation could help there. And finally, last week, we went into frequencies of the brain and saw some interesting things related to sleep and the fact that in our deepest levels of sleep, at the slowest frequencies, our brain is still very, very, very active. We also looked at Qigong. What we'll do in this session, we'll do our review as we're doing now, and then we're going to have a guided kinesthetic meditation using Qigong. It's called a shadow exercise. Then we'll go into the topic today, the 3 realms of reality, and look at consciousness, the subconscious, and something called the unconscious realm. And this area has been called different things by different people at different times, but basically we're talking about the sea that we are residing in. Then, of course, we'll do our detachment meditation. Just quickly, we do have our resources available. And I show this each time just to remind people that if they've missed a class or if there's something they want to review, they can go back and look at the video. And you can use the video to screen capture any particular slide you're interested in. I also use the video as a way of documenting the things that I say. So if there's anything that I present that you feel is not correct or you want to provide more feedback, please do so. Another resource is a DVD. There's a DVD available. Just let me know if you want a copy. There'll be a small cost to produce it, but it has all of the meditations and the Qigong exercises on it. From session 5, I got some interesting questions, as well as comments about our Qigong introduction. The questions ranged from dealing with questions about fasting to ideas about what will happen in a group meditating. And the one about fasting is interesting because we had talked about the fact that the brain cannot consume fat. And so when we fast and we reduce the amount of carbohydrates in our system, what does the brain do? Well, it uses the liver, and the liver provides a special molecule energy packet specifically for the brain. And providing a person has a healthy liver, fasting should not be a problem. The other thing you can do is take some coconut, pure organic coconut oil. The liver can use that directly to create this special power molecule. The question about meditating in groups and how that would affect frequencies, I think that would be an interesting research question. We have the equipment today to monitor frequencies in a room, and I suspect that a room of people meditating would in some way impact the frequencies prevalent in a room. That would be interesting to see. An interesting question about the cost charged by some groups who provide meditation services. It costs money to do things, and my only issue is that sometimes These groups charge quite significant amounts to participate in their seminars and retreats. Buyer beware, I guess. An interesting one about taking sleep aids and how that might affect frequencies. This again is another great research question. My only personal reaction is that if you take an artificial aid to sleep, that would in some way impact the body's normal process of going through the levels of frequencies. You might go unconscious faster than your frequencies dropping. I don't know, but that would be an interesting one. Another question came up in regards to hypnosis and how hypnosis could be related to, say, guided meditations and whatnot. Hypnosis was something I got involved in at a very young age, high school age, and I found it extremely interesting. And as I continued studying and doing different things in this area, I now have a personal idea about hypnosis. I think hypnosis is a natural phenomenon. I think we hypnotize ourselves, and we can be easily hypnotized. The fact that so many people can be hypnotized means that it's a kind of natural reflex or a natural response. What do I think is happening? Well, like in a guided meditation, during hypnosis, the individual surrenders his or her conscious control to the speaker. However, different from a guided meditation, I do not modify the person's belief system. So if you watch a hypnotist, they will modify what you believe. So you might believe an onion is an apple. So, an interesting area to explore. Like the comments about Qigong, it seems like people are enjoying it. And today we're going to do the introductory exercises again. We'll have a chance to repeat those today and 4 more times before this session, before this course ends. Okay. Want to just mention the Hergyu point for relaxation and balancing. And there's the graphic if you want to go online and capture it. We also looked at another acupressure point with the triple burner, or sometimes called the 3 treasures. Easy to access. You can do this quite unobtrusively during a meeting, even if you're feeling a little bit under. This is a stimulating thing. If you need more energy, you need to balance quickly, this one is great. The Hergyu is more for dealing with pain and anxiety. Just want to show you the wave frequency chart. I bring this up again only because it's so important. You should look into it. This is the sine curve. As some of you may know, this particular curve, the sine curve, is prevalent in all of science and all of natural history. It goes back thousands and thousands. The earliest record from China is about 4,000 years ago. They were drawing pictures of this curve. So it's an interesting one. So it's worth paying attention to. The point here is I want you to please notice that there are 2 phases or states of the frequencies, and both of those are divided in 2. So there's really 4 different variations. There's the rising and the falling in both. 4 different phases, 4 different states. I get a little bit mixed up with the word phase and state, so we want to be careful here. Later on, there is a traditional Chinese medicine term for those: new yin, old yin, new yang, old yang. Some of the terms that we'll be picking up on today, we'll be looking at, of course, conscious state, our unconscious state, and our unconscious realm, the sea that we reside in. Under conscious state, I'd like to introduce something called awakening. And under unconscious state, I'd like to introduce something I call self-adjustments healing. And in the unconscious realm, there's something I call boundaries. So there are boundaries within this unconscious realm. We're going to talk about synchronicity and introduce a term, cosmic habit force. And finally, we're going to talk about our timeline, and our internal timeline and reconciliation. Now, there's a lot of information here. I'll touch on them. If I don't get to all of them in this session, I will over the remaining 4, okay? But here are the key ones, I think, for the rest of the course that we'll be focusing on. Okay, we're going to do our shadow exercise now. We're going to do the introductory Qigong. We're just going to do level 1 and the arms. So we'll do the foot position 1 and the 3 basic movements of the arm. When we look at the word realm, I found some interesting variations, 3 different approaches to the word realm. The first one being a kingdom, the second one being a sphere or domain, and the third one being a terrestrial biogeographical division of the earth kind of thing. Well, it's the second one that I'm interested in, the idea of a domain, the realm of possibilities. And that's what we'll be talking about here. What are the possibilities in our 3 realms? So let's talk about this conscious state. When we are awake and when we wake up in the morning, we have an awareness of self. We have an awareness of what day it is and whether we have to go to work or school. And this is what we call being conscious. However, if you look at this chart, it is pretty much accepted that our conscious mind doesn't really do a lot, that about 90% of what goes on in our bodies is really handled by something called the subconscious. So we're conscious, we go to bed, and we go unconscious. We can go unconscious. We can have levels of awareness during the day. You may be working and not really there. You may be daydreaming, or another example, you could be driving in your car and not realize that a great number of miles have went by, and all of a sudden you say, "Oh, where was I?" So we can go unconscious quite easily. It begs the question then, if our subconscious does most of the work, it keeps the body functioning and works in the background, and our conscious mind comes and goes. We're conscious sometimes and sometimes we're not. And I'd like you to go back to our first session where we talked about the difference of what is real and what is true. And I just have to bring this up because it strikes me as being right in our face that if our conscious mind isn't there all the time, and it's not everywhere, that maybe what we call being conscious isn't really our true self. That maybe the part of us that is there all the time and does the majority of the work that we call the subconscious, maybe that's really the true you. Just an idea, something to think about, and a lot of people have pondered that. There was a individual, Carl Jung, who in the 20s came up with a term, synchronicity. And what he was referring to is this idea of the unconscious realm, that there is a sea that we live in, and our conscious mind and subconscious mind go about their business, and then for some reason, things seem to line up. Now, Carl Jung looked at some of the Eastern philosophies dealing with synchronicity and how is it that things seem to just happen. Well, you know things don't magically happen. There's a reason why things line up. There's a reason why you end up in the same room with that person who you needed to meet, and they needed to meet you, and for some reason you're both there at the exact time at the right place. Carl Jung called it synchronicity, but he was really introducing the whole idea of something called the I-Ching. He studied the I-Ching, and he actually wrote the foreword to a Western translation of the I-Ching. In the East, the I-Ching is considered a way of understanding this realm, this greater realm that we live in. And this chart here with the Chinese symbols on it, and notice in the center of it there is that yin-yang symbol, that as the wave of the energies move, there are 8 different states. And let me show you a different chart of that. Here's the same symbols that you saw in a sort of clock formation in the previous chart, but just written out, and there's some English words there to help us put some understanding to it. And notice that it kind of looks like Morse code. There are 3 lines in each of those blocks, 8 blocks, and some of the lines are solid and some of them are broken. Well, the solid ones are considered the yang energy, and the broken ones are considered the yin. So the broken ones allow energy to flow in, and the solid ones do not. Now, you can do the math with 3 lines and 2 options. Here are your permutations. These also equate to, as I indicated earlier when I showed you the sine wave, the 4 different states. So this matches up with the 4 different states in a special way, and we're going to look at that. Here's the same chart looking at the 4 or the 8 different states that energy can take. And remember, I mentioned there was the early yin, early yang, old yang. Okay, and that breaks it up into 4, but then you can break it up again. But look at this, and you'll notice that some of the movements are yang in Tai Chi, and this also applies to our Qigong that we did earlier. Some of the movements are yang. All of the movements pushing away from your center are yang. All of the movements pulling towards you are yin. And they take on different qualities here. They've given them, some of them, the qualities of heaven and earth, wind and water and fire and thunder. And I think they use these qualities just to help people visualize, or in some way conceptualize, doing each of these states slightly differently. They feel different. So looking at traditional Chinese medicine, we considered the fact that there were these 4 different states that the traditional Chinese medicine doctor would have to balance: excess and deficiency. And that broke into 4 different possibilities. But there's really, if you look at the chart to the right, there's really 8. 4 for the yin and 4 for the yang. If you look at the top left one with the red and gray, you'll notice that as the yang energy increases, there's a point where it stops dramatically increasing. That's the early yang. And then as it starts to goes past that center point, halfway through the increase slows down. The sensation is like when you get on an elevator going down and someone hits the down button. The whole falling doesn't feel the same. The first part of that fall feels more dramatic than the second part. And that's what this is capturing. The first part of the yang energy, there's a big push, and then that push de-accelerates to a maximum height. And the decrease in the yang energy, the initial part of the decrease is rapid, and then it slows down. Same thing with the yin. Initially with the yin, you might feel really tired all of a sudden, and then the amount or the speed at which your energy is leaving slows down to a maximum low. And then as it starts to come back, initially there's a big surge of the energy coming back, and then it slows down. So there are 8 different phases or 8 different stages of the 2 phases, yin and yang. So there's 4 for the yin and 4 for the yang. You don't need to know this, but when you're practicing the movements, the Qigong movements, I'll try to point it out to you. Or you can just observe it in things like if you watch a surfer. That's a great example. You watch a surfer trying to catch the wave. The surfer wants to catch it right at the top of the yang, the maximum energy point. And there's a point where they speed up rapidly, and then that speed doesn't accelerate quite as much, but it's still fast. But there's that initial part is really fast. Yeah, you could watch it in someone throwing a baseball, or you could watch it in a yo-yo. That's a great example where you throw the yo-yo down, and initially there's a big thrust, and before the yo-yo hits the end of the string, it, of course, has to slow down. Interestingly enough, the Chinese were not the only ones to look at these variations of energy and to try to quantize it and to try to find a way of understanding the synchronicity. So you can see that the Africans had a numbering system, looks like binary, as I mentioned earlier, the Chinese. There's an Arabic version, and there are versions all over the world but what's interesting, if you notice, it's the same concept of permutations of the sine wave. Okay, so we're going to do our traditional meditation, and in this setting, we're going to go a little bit longer than we have in the past, just so that you can experience a longer than 5-minute sitting. But I want you to be aware as you're sitting that you may experience what I call the internal change of yin and yang. In our Qigong exercise, I showed you a demonstration of using your yang energy and using your yin. When you're sitting still, the body is going through stages of being more yang and being more yin. It's a wave. And just be aware that you will feel tension build up like a wave coming to a swell. Like if you watch a boat at a dock and the wave comes in, it will rise slowly and then it will sink with the wave. Well, your body is doing that, but only very, very little tiny movement. It's not dramatic. So while you're sitting, just pay attention and see if you can become aware of this natural slow rhythm inside the body. So we'll do our meditation now. Well, that's the end of session 6. We're going to continue on in session 7 with the whole idea of conscious change. So we're going to go back to our conscious state, and we're going to dig more into this idea of awakening and also the subconscious ability to self-adjust and heal. So that's coming up next week, which will be February 23rd, back here in the same room, B400. I want to thank you for participating and watching this video, and have a great day.